Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Julie Holbrook, and I oversee graduate admissions at Harvard's School of Engineering and Applied Sciences. I'm joined today by my colleague, Dr. Alexis Stokes, who is our Assistant Dean for Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging. And both Alexis and I will be giving you an overview of our PhD program and our student life and our commitment to diversity, inclusion, and belonging this morning. The chat is disabled, but the Q&A function is live, and we have fabulous colleagues behind the scenes who will be answering questions. So feel free to type questions into the Q&A. If you see a question that you really like, please feel free to upvote it so that it gets bumped to the top so we can be sure to respond to that. And depending on how much time we have at the end, we will be able to take a few questions in real time after both Alexis and I give our presentations. So, and just, you probably know this, but this is being recorded. So we'll get started. So we are here to talk about the PhD program. If you're interested in our master's programs, we have separate information sessions for those, and the dates and times for those are posted on the website. You're welcome to stay. The application is the same, but we will be talking specifically about the PhD program in this session. So we have several areas of study at SEAS. We have a PhD in applied mathematics. We offer a PhD in applied physics, which includes a material science track, which I'll talk about in just a second. We offer the PhD in computer science and then also in engineering sciences. And engineering sciences is a little bit quirky. At other schools, you might be earning a PhD directly in bioengineering, for example, but at SEAS, the degree is in engineering sciences. And then we have 4 subfields. So bioengineering, electrical engineering, environmental science and engineering, and material science and mechanical engineering. And we'll talk a little bit about how you pick which subfield you're interested in just a second. So some quick facts about our PhD program. The time to degree is about 5 to 6 years. Some areas, the students get done faster than others. So for example, the experimentalists in applied physics, it might take them slightly longer because they're waiting for results in a lab than maybe a computer science student who isn't necessarily performing experiments. But overall, you can think about spending about 5 to 6 years with us. 10 courses are required. That's for student in any degree area. So applied physics students take 10 courses and CS students also take 10 courses. Each student is expected to complete a qualifying exam. That's generally done toward the end of the second year. And then there is a final thesis defense, which is the culmination of your years of research, which you'll do at the very end when you're ready to graduate. Those requirements are true for students across our areas. All students are also required to serve as a teaching fellow. So this is the Harvard's equivalent of a TA or a teaching assistantship. So again, in the second year, in addition to thinking about your qualifying exam, you will also fulfill the TF requirement, which is a one-time requirement. We ask all students to TF a quarter time in a class. You can select the course that you TF in. It's an important part of our PhD program because so many of our students go on to positions in academia where they're teaching. We have found that a lot of our students really enjoy the teaching fellowship and continue to TF beyond the requirement if they wish. A little bit about funding. So all of our PhD students are fully funded as long as they remain in good academic standing. Funding happens in a number of ways. There are fellowships, there are research assistantships, the teaching fellowship contributes to your funding. And then there are also students who come in with external fellowships, maybe from the NSF or NDSEG or industry. And so when we talk about funding, we're going to talk sort of in broad strokes, but if you have specific questions about your specific case, we can certainly talk about those offline. This is a little bit about our student clubs and organizations. So you'll see that we have lots of activities for students to participate in outside of the lab. We do want you to get outside of the lab every once in a while. We want you to get fresh air. We want you to experience life in Alston and Cambridge. And a lot of these student organizations will help you do that. So we have an active graduate council. Those are graduate students from across our school that advise the dean on certain things and also work closely with our student affairs and academic programs offices. You'll see a number of sort of organizations that are centered around a particular population. So the Graduate Women in Science and Engineering, Black Scientists and Engineers. There's a big data club for those of you interested in big data. This is not a comprehensive list, but it's indicative of the kinds of things we have going on for students outside of academics. So you heard me refer to both Alston and Cambridge. We used to be exclusively in Cambridge, which is where most of Harvard University is. However, we have grown and expanded, and we have been fortunate to move about half of the school to Alston, which is a neighborhood just across the Charles River. So we now have faculty and staff and graduate students and undergraduate students in Cambridge, and we have them in Alston as well. So this is a look at the Cambridge campus. This is sort of a bird's eye view of Harvard Square, and C's is sort of toward the top of the photo. And then we've also expanded into Alston, which is the picture that you see here. This is the Science and Engineering Complex. We all moved in within the last 2 or 3 months, and classes have started in the fall. So we have a lot of graduate students and a lot of undergraduate students coming to this building every day to take classes. This is another view of Alston, of the Science and Engineering Complex on the inside. The building is enormous and has lots of sort of very thoughtfully designed space. So there's active learning lab space, maker space, club space, there are flexible classrooms. It's located near the business school and the iLab, which is Harvard University's entrepreneurship hub. A number of faculty and have offices and labs in the SEC. So as I mentioned, about half the school remained in Cambridge, and about half of the school moved to Alston. And sort of generally speaking, the applied mathematicians, applied physicists, and the environmental science and engineers, they stayed in Cambridge. And that is largely because they have very close links with other departments, other Harvard departments in Cambridge. So the physics department, for example, lives in Cambridge, and the applied physicists have very, very close links with them. And the earth and planetary science department also lives in Cambridge, and the environmental science people all have very, very close links to EPS. So there were very good reasons for those faculty to stay in Cambridge. In Alston, all of computer science and all of electrical engineering has moved to Alston. So the faculty, their labs, their offices, their research space. And then there's a split location for the bioengineers and the material science and mechanical engineers. So some of the bioengineers stayed in Cambridge because the lab space needed to stay in Cambridge because of equipment or because of space. And for the material science and mechanical engineers, again, those who are most collaborative with the applied physicists also stayed in Cambridge. And some of them are doing a little bit of both. So they have space in both Cambridge and in Alston. For graduate students, you can think about wherever your research advisor is that's the campus where you would be spending the most time. So here's just a quick Google map to sort of show you where the two campuses are in relationship to one another. So at the top of the screen, you'll see the C shield. That's the Cambridge campus. You'll see it's just north of Harvard Yard. And then you'll see the Charles River, that blue sort of swooshy in the middle. And then the Alston campus is that Harvard shield, which is down at the bottom. This is just a Google map. It's not quite 2 miles. It's about a 22-minute walk, but there's a shuttle service which has created a new loop to move between the two C's campuses. And so it's actually been running fairly smoothly this fall, and the students are not having trouble getting between the two campuses. There's also plenty of bike space. The Alston campus has a lot of bike parking. And so we've seen a lot of students biking between both campuses as well. So we can move to the application piece of this. If you've looked at the application, it went live about a week and a half ago. You'll see that you can access the application from the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. So this may be true for some of the programs that you're applying to, where they're sort of an umbrella organization. It's the case with C's, where our application is managed by the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. And then GSAS oversees the PhD application for the physics department, the chemistry department, the humanities departments. So you will apply directly to GSAS, and I have a screenshot of their website right here, and the URL is up at the top. So the first thing you'll do is go in and create an account in Slate. That's the software that we use for the application. You'll be able to go into Slate and start your work, save it, and come back to it. So you don't need to feel like you need to sit down and do the entire application at one time. The most important thing on this slide is the deadline. December 15th is the deadline. The application will shut down at 5 o'clock on December 15th. And we, out of fairness and equity to all of the applicants, we do not accept late applications. So please think about your timeline and absolutely plan to submit by the 15th. And I would advise you to maybe even submit a day or two before. There is a lot of traffic on the site on December 15th because it's a common deadline. And so, you know, it has been the case that students have experienced delays or trouble with the website. So if you can get all of your materials in by December 14th, I strongly encourage you to do that. Here's a bit about what our application requires. These are all things that probably most of the schools that you're applying to require. So there's the application form and the application fee, the statement of purpose, the C supplemental form. We'll talk about that in just a minute. 3 letters of recommendation, official TOEFL or IELTS scores if they are required, a copy of your resume or CV, and your graduate and undergraduate transcripts. Your transcripts do not need to be official at this point. You can upload PDFs of your unofficial transcripts into the application. You do not need to submit GRE scores. You may have taken the test. Please don't submit your scores to us. We don't want to see them. You don't even need to mention them in your application. It is the case that we are not requiring GREs for any student, but not only are we not requiring them, we would actually like to not have that information. So you will upload your transcripts and your resume with your application, and your letter writers will submit their letters online. You will register them in the application. You'll put their name and email address in, and then they will get an email from Slate that says you've requested a letter of recommendation from them. Let them know that you're doing that so that they can check their spam filter in the event that they don't see the email right away. For your TOEFL, you'll need to use code 3451 to submit your official TOEFL to us. All right, a little bit about the application. The best thing you can do is show that your research interests match the research interests of our faculty. And the best way to do that is to have a really good idea of what our faculty do. So you should take a look at the SEAS website. There's a nice listing of sort of research areas where you can click through and see which faculty are interested in what kind of work. So which of our faculty are doing work in optics, which of our faculty are doing work in artificial intelligence, which of our faculty are doing work in fluid mechanics, for example. The best thing for you is to make sure that we do what you're interested in. So please do take some time to read through the websites of our faculty so you can see what they're doing. Elucidate that in your statement of purpose. So if you are writing and really are interested in a particular faculty member at SEAS, tell us that. Maybe you're not interested in a particular faculty member, but a particular body of research. So artificial intelligence, for example. Use your statement of purpose to tell us why you're a good fit for SEAS and why SEAS is a good fit for you. That's the most important piece of your application, because wherever you end up for a PhD program, you will be there for several years, and we want to make sure that this is the right place for you. You will be asked to identify faculty members in whose work you're interested. These should be SEAS faculty members, meaning if you are interested in somebody at the medical school, that's fine, but you really do need to make sure that you're interested in faculty members at SEAS, because SEAS faculty have to serve as research advisors to SEAS students. There's lots of room for collaboration, and our faculty collaborate with lots of people from the medical school and other schools at Harvard, and also other schools outside of Harvard. So, there's plenty of room for that once you're here, but we really do need to make sure that there are SEAS faculty that are a good match of research for you. The C supplemental application is something I alluded to a couple minutes ago. That's a form, it's embedded in the application, so it's not extra, but it allows you to sort of rank order your areas of interest for research. So if you're a computer science student and artificial intelligence is your first sort of choice in terms of research, you would rank artificial intelligence #1, and then maybe programming languages #2 and graphics #3. What that does is it allows us to get your application to the faculty who do the work in the areas that you list. So if you list artificial intelligence as your #1 choice, we're going to make sure that your application is triaged to the artificial intelligence faculty first. Now, all faculty have access to applications, so it could be that somebody in graphics is also a good match for you and is interested, but it just allows us to make sure that your application is seen by the right people right away. Your letters of recommendation, whoopsie, sorry, I got ahead of myself. Your letters of recommendation should be really specific about you. They should be able to talk in detail about your preparation for research and your creativity and your skill set if you're potentially working in a lab, for example. 3 letters are required. We often get questions if people can submit 4 letters. They can. 3 is really all we need. I wouldn't submit any more than 4, but if you can't narrow it down to 3 for a particular reason, then submitting 4 is fine. At least 2 of the letters should be from academics. It could be that you've done an internship, and so you know somebody in industry or in a professional setting, and that's perfectly appropriate. But we really do need at least 2 letters to be from academics. Remind your letter writers of who you are and how they know you and what you've done. So if you took a class with them, remind them of the grade that you got and the work that you did. If you've done a research project with them, whether it's a short-term or a long-term project, remind them of the specifics of what it is that you accomplished in their group. That way they will be able to write a really specific letter about you. Bear in mind, faculty are getting potentially dozens and dozens of requests for letters at this time of year. So send them a copy of your CV, jog their memory about who you are and what you've done in their class or in their research group or on a project. That will help them write a better letter for you. All right, the TOEFL and the IELTS. The TOEFL or IELTS, we accept both. It is required for any student who does not have an undergraduate degree from a school where English is the language of instruction. We get a lot of questions about whether or not a master's degree meets this requirement. It does not. So you must have an undergraduate degree that's typically 3 or 4 years from a school where English is the language of instruction. Even if you have a 1-year or 2-year master's degree from a school where English is the language of instruction, but your undergraduate degree is from a different school, you'll need to take the TOEFL or the IELTS. The required minimum TOEFL score is 80 and the required minimum score on the IELTS is 6.5. If you submit the TOEFL score, you'll need to use that ETX code 3451 to send your score to us. If you take the IELTS, they send the scores in a different way. Your score must be valid at the time of entry into our program, which means that your score cannot be expired in September of 2022. So if you took the test a year ago or 2 years ago, it might be valid now, but it will have expired by next September. So you'll need to submit a new test. I alluded to this before. December 15th is our deadline. It's a strict deadline. The application will shut down afterwards. So please make sure you have everything lined up and ready to go by the 15th and before, if possible. What happens after December 15th? So we will receive all the applications after the deadline and we'll start reviewing them. We'll spend, the end of the month of December, the entire month of January and early into February making final admissions decisions. The Graduate School of Arts and Sciences sends out official admissions decisions generally in early to mid-February. Students have until April 15th to decide about the graduate program that they're going to attend. That's a standard date across most programs in the United States. And so it should be the case that that's the date for most of the schools that you apply to. So you shouldn't feel pressured to make a decision earlier than that. we covered a lot of information. These are useful links. So questions and information about the degree requirements. So the 10 course requirement, the qualifying exam, the TF requirement, all of that can be found at our website on the academics page. For more information about the application itself, there's a section of the website for prospective students. And there's also a section on the GSAS website for prospective students. That's where you'll find the link to the actual application. If you have any questions, please email us at admissions@SEAS. I know nobody likes to email generic email addresses, but I assure you there are a number of us who monitor this email. And so we will get back to you. The staff in the admissions office, we're all looking at this email all the time. So please send us an email and we will get back to you. You'll get an auto reply. There's a lot of information. It will likely answer your question. But if you've got a super specific question to you, send us an email and we will get back to you as soon as we can. So I'm going to stop sharing. And in just a second, turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Alexis Stokes. Alexis is going to talk to you a little bit about our diversity, inclusion, and belonging initiatives and efforts at SEAS. And once she's done, we will take a couple questions.
Thank you, Julie. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone joining us. And so I will share screen, hopefully. Awesome. And so as Julie stated, I'm the Assistant Dean for Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging here at SEAS. And so SEAS is committed to building and continuously improving a culture that embraces and exemplifies diversity, inclusion, belonging, and equity. And I want to emphasize that SEAS does believe it is everyone's responsibility to contribute to this work. It should not be shouldered by those that have minoritized, marginalized identities. And we do have a diversity inclusion strategic plan. It is on our website. So we do invite you to go through that strategic plan. Feel free to reach out to me or anyone in my office if you have questions about that plan. We do have a diversity inclusion committee that meets throughout the academic year to implement that strategic plan. We are in year 3 of that plan. And so we also put out reports on updates of where we are with implementing the 42 recommendations from that plan. So to further emphasize our commitment, I want to get kind of a little bit more specific about that commitment, in that we are committed to naming the problem and to not shy away from having those difficult conversations. And so when we think about amplifying Black voices, saying the names of those that are disproportionately impacted by inequities, those that have lost their lives, those that have lost their lives to advance this work as well. We are committed to saying their names and addressing systemic oppression, specifically systemic racism and anti-Black racism, creating a safe and welcoming environment for everyone to thrive in their work and in their research. Supporting those of marginalized identities through support resources. We'll go over in some detail of what those resources are. I know Julie touched on some of them with the organizations. And again, engaging in the difficult conversations both in and outside of the classroom. These are some recruitment events. So if you want to continue to engage with us, specifically engage with my office or faculty that will be at these conferences, you can visit our website to see the dates of these conferences in addition to other conferences and events that we will be having. And most of these, of course, are virtual this academic year. And so if you will be attending any of them, we encourage you to come by our virtual booth. These are webinars that we will be hosting throughout the semester. And so some of the questions that were mentioned in the Q&A will be answered at many of these webinars. If you're thinking about how do I decide where to apply, thinking about how do I reach out to faculty if I'm interested in working in their lab, we'll go over those things in these various webinars. We're thinking about how do I even get started on that statement of purpose. And then at the end of the semester, around mid-November, we will hold graduate application assistance appointments. And so these are 15-minute appointments with graduate students or postdocs if you would like for someone to review your statement of purpose and provide you some feedback on it. So SEAS does have a post-baccalaureate program. And so this is a 2-year training program where students will engage in extensive research experience and have access to courses and professional development opportunities. This program is specifically for students that maybe didn't have access to research during our undergraduate years, maybe didn't have access to certain courses at their undergraduate institution, maybe didn't decide to go to graduate school until later, which is perfectly normal and okay. And so maybe wants kind of that bridge to graduate school. And so this is an opportunity to engage in 2 years, 1 to 2 years of training and research experience before going on to pursue a PhD in STEM. So those that are admitted into the post-bac program have access to all Harvard resources, the library, faculty, et cetera. You're paired with a SEAS faculty member as your mentor, and you work in their lab for 1 to 2 years. This is a fully funded program as well. If you have questions, the email address is there. You can email diversity@seas.harvard.edu. If you have specific questions about the post-bac program, this application is separate from the graduate application. So if you're interested in applying to the post-bac, that is a separate application. So once you are a part of our community, we do provide retention services and support to make sure, again, that this is a safe environment where everyone can thrive and succeed. So one of those events is BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, People of Color Connections Welcome event. This happens at the beginning of the academic year. This is a Harvard-wide event. So this is an opportunity for individuals that identify as BIPOC to connect with faculty, students, staff, researchers across the university that share that identity as well. We provide support to go to conferences. We have community spaces for affinity groups so that you can connect with others that have shared identities. The In Touch peer-to-peer support network is a graduate students that have been trained to be a peer support for other graduate students. And then if you are interested in computer science, we have the LEAP Alliance Consortium as well. And that is, there's information on our website about LEAP. Are some additional resources that you would have access to. So of course, my office, the Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging. And then also by being a student in SEAS, you also have access to the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences Office of Diversity and Minority Affairs. They hire diversity fellows. SEAS is actually hiring diversity fellows starting this academic year. So that is also an employment opportunity. If you're interested in advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion within SEAS, you can apply for a fellow's position. You also have access to the Faculty of Arts and Sciences Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging, and then the various student groups as well. Some of these sit within SEAS, and then some are Harvard-wide or within the graduate school. These are additional resources: Title IX coordinators, the Office of Gender Equity, as well as the Anonymous Reporting Hotline. So this is an anonymous resource for all community members that if you are to experience bias or harassment, you can use this hotline to report that experience, and you will be followed up with, and you can remain as anonymous as you would like throughout the process. If you report something that is of a biased nature, it does get forwarded to my office, and then it is handled from there between myself and other senior leaders. The Accessible Education Office, we have rooms with assistive listening devices. SEAS is also one of the founding members of the Gender Inclusive Restroom Map. And so this launched this academic year. It is behind Harvard Key for community members. And so this is when you are traveling across campus, as Julie mentioned, you may be going from Cambridge campus to the Austin SEC, and you want to know where can I find a gender inclusive restroom. This app allows you to locate that as you're traveling across campus to be able to safely use the restroom. We also have lactation rooms that students have access to as well. I apologize for the construction noise if you can hear it. These are programs and initiatives that my office hosts. This is not the full list. This is just kind of a glimpse into some of the things that you would be able to participate in. Some of these are open to the public and will be happening this semester. So if you just wanted to log on, since they are virtual. So for instance, the Intersections of STEM and Social Justice seminar is where we invite scholars from across the world to share their research that sits at the intersection of STEM and social justice. And this can be STEM research that is used to address social injustice. It can also be research that highlights how STEM has been used to create inequities and support oppression. So we do invite you to see that on the website and log on and join us for any of those seminars. We also host a community read, and this is an opportunity for all SEAS community members to engage in learning and development around equity and inclusion. We purchase the book for individuals that would like to have a hard copy of it, and then we host sessions throughout the academic year to discuss them. The discuss the various chapters, and then we host the author at the end of the academic year. We hold virtual coffee breaks. So this is something we started in the last year and a half so that community members could still stay connected while we were working and studying remotely. This is my contact information, as well as Veronica Diaz-Santana, our Assistant Director of Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging. Feel free to reach out, and then I will also stay on and answer questions with Julie.
Thank you, Alexis. Thank you, everyone. There are a lot of great questions in the Q&A, and I know that a number of them have been answered by my colleagues behind the scenes, but there are a few that I think are probably relevant to a large number of you. So we will we'll tackle those. Somebody wrote about contacting faculty member as a potential advisor and what happens, what's the best way to do that, and what happens if you don't get a response. And those are all really good questions, and this can be a source of anxiety for students. So let me say this. Number one, you are absolutely free to reach out to faculty members in whose work you are interested. I advise you to do that via email. Having said that, some faculty are better than others at responding. And I'll also note that they are getting just an exceptionally high volume of email at this time of year. So if you reach out to a faculty member and they don't respond, don't necessarily take that personally. It doesn't mean you shouldn't apply. It doesn't mean any of those things. It just means that the faculty member is probably a little bit behind in their email. So reach out to as many faculty members as you wish. The most likely way to get a response and the most interesting emails from prospective students show that the student has done a lot of homework about that particular research group. So you have been to the faculty member's website, you have seen who's in their group, what the group is doing, what the different projects that the postdocs and graduate students are working on. Just like in your statement of purpose, where we're encouraging you to be specific and thoughtful, the email that you send to any faculty member, and this goes for Harvard and for any other graduate program, it should show that you have done your homework and have put in some time to learn about the research that's going on in that group. You may get a response and you may not. If you don't, it doesn't mean you shouldn't apply. It doesn't mean that the faculty member is or is not admitting students. It just means that they might be a little bit slow on their email. It's impossible to say if a faculty member is admitting new PhD students because things are very fluid for faculty. So they might think they want 1 or 2 new students, and then it turns out that actually they just got a big research contract and now they need more than they thought, or maybe a research avenue changed direction. And so we don't have a list of faculty who are or are not accepting students in a given year, because that list is just changing every day. So find a faculty member. Even better, find more than one faculty member at SEAS whose work is interesting to you and reach out to them and apply, even if you don't get a response.
And I'll add to that, Julie, that many faculty have started putting information on their website.
Yes.
First around prospective graduate students. So as Julie said, please visit their website, because they may have information not only about if they're accepting students, but they also might have information about how to reach out to them. Some faculty have specific instructions. They want the subject line to be a specific thing so that it stands out to them, or maybe they want you to copy their assistant. So just make sure you pay attention to their website first.
I wish that I could say one size fits all, but we have, 100 faculty members and they all sort of do things in their particular way. And that's even true, like within computer science. Some computer science faculty might handle things one way and some might handle it another. So it's not even like discipline wide. Related to that, we have a question about faculty who are sort of in cross-discipline areas. And that is very much the case at SEAS, meaning our applied math faculty might be doing work in mechanical engineering and material science. Our computer science faculty might be doing work in electrical engineering. And so when you go to the website and you start to look at the research areas under bioengineering, for example, you'll find bioengineering faculty, but then you'll also find computer science faculty or electrical engineering faculty. In terms of picking the degree that you apply for, you should pick the degree that is closest to what it is that you want to do. So if you're an electrical engineer and you want to work on bio-related problems, but you're really at heart an electrical engineer, you should apply to electrical engineering, knowing that there is room for you at C's to work on bio-related problems, because the interdisciplinariness of us is one of our unique and differentiating factors. So it is not uncommon for research groups to have faculty or to have students from across the C's areas in them. And that, I think, is one of the really great things about us. But administratively, it makes it a little bit complicated. So when you pick a degree area to apply, whether it's engineering or computer science or applied physics or applied math, pick the degree that you want the PhD in. Now, having said that, if you get to C's and it ends up that you sort of veer more toward bioengineering than electrical engineering like you originally thought, there is a mechanism to change that once you're in C's. But for the purposes of the application, rest assured that the faculty members in bioengineering who work closely with the electrical engineers will have an opportunity and to review your application, as will the electrical engineers. So don't worry too much about that piece of it. Just pick the area that makes the most sense for you based on your research interests at this moment. What happens if I submit my application and list faculty, but they're not hiring? So we broached that a little bit a couple minutes ago. There are a lot of faculty who collaborate with one another, both within an area, CS, for example, and then across Cs. So if a faculty member is not admitting new graduate students, they may still look at applications, and they will often say to their colleagues, hey, this isn't the perfect fit for me this year because I'm not taking any new PhD students, but you and I are working on a project together, and this person might be really good for that. So there is a lot of conversation between the faculty about our applicants, and they will often send each other notes and application materials that they think might not be a perfect fit for them, but might be good somewhere else in C's. Alexis, are there diversity initiatives or application help opportunities for women in engineering?
I'm muted. Absolutely. And so one of those is that we do have the Harvard Graduate Women in Science and Engineering organization, and we work closely with them. They also work very closely with our Women's Center. So that is an organization you would be able to get involved in. On the recruitment side, we will be at the Society of Women Engineers Conference this year. Also, the webinars that I mentioned, those are available to women, and also the graduate application assistance appointments that will happen mid-November. Those are also open to women. We also are hosting various networking events with faculty. Those will go on to our website soon on the diversity page. Those are also open to women. We do recognize that we all come to C's with various identities, and we also recognize that gender is not a binary. And so these events are also open to those that do not identify as man or woman, or not, they identify as non-binary or a member of the LGBTQIA community.
Thank you. Here's a question. I'm interested in quantum, but I've never worked in a quantum lab. Can I be admitted? So I will say this, and this is a question that our office receives all the time. Faculty often receive this question. It is really impossible for us to say whether or not somebody can be admitted until they have submitted a complete application. The complete application includes everything you submit on your behalf, and then also what your letter writers submit. So we cannot possibly speak to anyone's chances of being admitted until we have received and reviewed thoroughly the entire application. What I can say is that a prior research experience is not a requirement. A number of our students come in having worked in research labs, and then a number of our students come in having very little or no research experience. We recognize that everyone's undergraduate experience is different, right? People need to do different things with their time as undergraduates. And so we do not have a hard line or a cutoff about if you don't have research experience, you won't be admitted. That's not the case. Tell us what you did do, right? Because the things that you did do, maybe you were a varsity athlete, maybe you had to care for a family member, maybe you worked, a full-time job or a part-time job. Those are all really important pieces about information about you. So even if you didn't work in a research lab, tell us what your context is and why you think graduate school is the right thing and why you're excited about working in a research lab.
And I'll add that for students that may feel that they do want that additional research experience prior to going into the PhD program, that is where the post-baccalaureate program can come into play. And so we are working with faculty to see which labs will be admitting post-bac students. So that may be an option for you.
Question about STEM backgrounds. So this person has a non-traditional engineering degree. What I will say is that we don't have any kind of filter or cutoff, but we do expect that our applicants are academically prepared to be successful in a graduate level applied sciences and engineering curriculum. So most of our students come in with backgrounds in engineering, computer science, mathematics, applied mathematics, physics, could be the biological sciences. We don't have a list of approved majors or anything like that. The most important thing you can do is demonstrate your preparation for our graduate level courses. And maybe that means you did a non-traditional undergraduate degree in philosophy, but then you spent a lot of time and took a lot of courses in computer science. It doesn't necessarily have to be the undergraduate degree, but we absolutely need to see that you're prepared to succeed in our courses, whether they be graduate level computer science courses or graduate level engineering courses or applied math courses. So that is the most important compelling case you can make in your application. I have taken these courses. I have done this well in these courses. These are the things that I've learned. This is what I've been able to put. This is what I've been able to either through an internship or research experience or some other thing. I've been able to use this and understand it better. So it is mostly the case that our students come in with sort of what we think of as traditional STEM backgrounds, but not necessarily. What is the right time to contact faculty members? I would say that anytime starting now. The semester will only get busier and busier for you and for them. So I suggest if you're interested in our program after hearing this session today, read up on what our faculty do and start reaching out. As Alexis and I said, they all sort of have a different way they want you to do that. So go to their website. They might have a form that they ask you to fill out directly from their website. They might want you to email them. But sooner rather than later, I think is probably the best rule of thumb. We don't have a minimum GPA cutoff. So again, it's not as though we have some sort of line in the sand. Our students generally have strong backgrounds in mathematics and engineering and computer science in those fields, but we do not have a cutoff. And we look at each application really thoroughly and, for lack of a better word, holistically. So there are students who have had a tough semester or a tough year. And as long as we see sort of an upward trend and sometimes the student is able to provide context for that difficult semester or difficult year, we encourage you to do that in your statement. So after you've talked about why you want to go to graduate school and why SEAS is a good place for you, if there's something you want the committee to know about your life or your experience, use the statement of purpose to tell us that. It doesn't need to be many pages, but by all means, take a paragraph or two and let us know if there was something going on in your world that impacted your sophomore year grades, for example. The committee is really thoughtful about that, and we read everything really carefully. So sort of blanket advice, if there's something you think the committee will have a question about or will be a concern for them, address it. Use a piece of your statement of purpose or the sort of extra space on the application to tell us as much as you're comfortable telling us, but context is always really helpful for the admissions committee.
I just want to add to that if you don't address it, that leaves opportunity for the faculty members that kind of have to try and assume or figure out what was going on. And that will either result in possibly someone assuming the wrong thing and inaccurate information or going on to the next application. And so as Julie said, always address that if you know that there is something that might be need further explanation.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. So you have interest in several different areas in SEAS. So who should you list on your application? That's a great question. And that's actually a really nice problem to have, because it is always better for students to know that there are multiple people at SEAS who do interesting work to them. And so you can list up to 3. There are sort of 3 fields on the actual application. You can select electrical engineers and environmental scientists, for example. So from that list of 3, it might be 2 electrical engineers and 1 environmental scientist. You are welcome, again, in your statement of purpose to list others that, if there are more than 3, but 3 is about the right number to show us that you're really focused on a particular thing. So students who start listing 10 faculty members, for example, that isn't particularly useful to us, because the truth is that that number is too high to be really and truly interested in 10 research labs at SEAS. But because we are interdisciplinary and there is a lot of sort of cross-pollination, it is totally appropriate to list faculty from a couple different areas in SEAS. And then again, sort of, flush that out in your statement of purpose. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for submitting all these wonderful questions. We weren't able to get to every question. Again, feel free to follow up with us at admissions at SEAS if you have a question specific to your situation. And Alexis gave you her office's contact information. If you have questions about the work her office does or any of her upcoming events, you are welcome to reach out to the admissions office, and we're happy to put you in touch, but also you can reach out to Alexis directly. And we wish you the best of luck as you think about graduate school. I encourage you to plan ahead for every program to which you are applying. I encourage you to submit your application as soon as you can. And most importantly, get your letter writers lined up. Do not wait until Thanksgiving to do that. So best of luck to everyone. Take good care. I hope to read your application later this year.